Okay, so now let's try this over. We are so excited you guys are joining us. Welcome to the Nitty Grit. I am Chantel.
And I'm John.
And we always don't mind starting stuff over because it's all good, right? So we're going to talk to you guys tonight. We have talked about, what was the first one, babe?
Commitment.
Commitment was the first one. Mm-hmm. And the second one was caring.
Caring.
You remember that one?
Yes.
So the second was caring. And so tonight, y'all, we're going to do an unusual one because not a lot of people talk about this. And then if they do, it's kind of negative. Like they don't really like the word the way it is. Mm-hmm. So you want to give them that word?
The word for this evening is compromise.
Ooh, compromise.
Compromise.
Compromise. So did you by any chance get the root word on that? Like where it comes from and all of that stuff? Because I didn't get to look that up. I would love to hear what you have.
I did my homework. So compromise, if you look it up, the basic definition is to reach a settlement. It's a settlement where you make concessions in some sort of interaction with somebody else. So that's the basic definition of it. But the origin of it comes from Latin. It's two words, com and promettere, which means to promise with. It's a with word, you know, just like commitment is going with. So compromise is promising with. So basically, both sides are promising to go with one another. And if you take the more comprehensive English definition, it's like, okay, we're going with one another and we are reaching a settlement because we both conceded something. Now, people, I think, consider the word compromise, it can be positive or it can be negative.
Yeah.
I think that when we say that word in our modern day, we're almost likely to tilt towards the negative. Like, I had to compromise to get what I wanted. Or, that person compromised their values and now look at the mess that they're in. So I would say that we have to get back to the root definition of it. And we have to get to the root origin of it and look at the compromise in a positive manner.
I like that. Mm-hmm. So communication is come with.
Commitment is come with.
And compromise
is promise with. Promise with.
Ooh, that's so powerful.
Yeah, it's promise with.
You know, so it's what's interesting about that is that a lot of times, I mean, I've never heard it broke down like that. Like I would have never even thought about it that way. Like for the most part, compromise has been like, oh, okay, I'm not changing. I'm not gonna lower my standards, basically, you know, and we're gonna talk about that a little bit here. But I love that concept because it really shifts things when you think about the root word of words. Correct. And I think that's what we want to talk about tonight, you guys, with these 4 C's, is because a lot of times certain words, we take them from what we're familiar with versus we very rarely do. A lot of times we often go and look up root words, where they came from, what they were meant for. And so we're hoping tonight that we can just share this kind of stuff with y'all because we're learning too. And we hope that it will help you as you're building your relationships, whether it's a relationship, as we said in the first episode, whether it's your co-worker relationship, your friendship relationship, your mother-daughter, father-son, or, you know, dating relationship, or a marriage like us.
Yes.
Okay. So let's just jump on into a little bit more. But thank you so much for clarifying that, because that was good stuff. What I wanted to ask you for the people is, like, do you believe that more people should make adjustments like that, like what you were sharing in their relationships, or should they just stick to their own ways?
I would say,
like, how would you balance that?
The way to balance it is to take the word compromise at its original value, its original meaning. So people, I think, would do well if they adjust from the right place as opposed to the wrong place. Now, if you feel compelled to compromise, either to get something for yourself or to make a peace, you're actually making a false peace. That's an inappropriate way to compromise. But if you are compromising because you are trying to make a settlement, you're willing to concede something to get closer to somebody else. Well, that type of compromise actually is beneficial for healthy relationships.
I like that. I think I agree. I agree. And we're going to talk a little bit about some compromising that we've had to do. So we'll give you guys that. But, as I was thinking about, the whole aspect of promising with someone, it's really goes back to the commitment part that we were talking about in the first episode of like, if you are willing to come with someone, you're willing to promise them, hey, we're actually on the same team here. And I think that's what I kind of hear with what you're sharing about, that it's promise with, is because it puts you on a team. I think that there's a lot of negativity with compromise, though, and I want to talk a little bit about that. Like, what do you think are some like myths that you've heard with compromise?
Okay, so when I read that question, the first thing that came to my mind was a scene from Fences, the Denzel Washington.
Oh, that's a good one.
So if you know this, I don't want to be too much of a spoiler if you haven't seen the movie or the play, but it's a relationship story. About how Denzel Washington's character, he's discontent in his life. He's got personal issues. Things didn't go the way he wanted, and in his professional life, his marriage and so forth. And he doesn't deal with them in a healthy way. He compromises in a negative way. And there's a scene where he's talking to Viola Davis, if I remember correctly, the wife, right? And she finds out that he's having an affair. And he gets defensive about it. And he says, I can feel like myself when I'm with the other woman. As if to say, I can't be myself with you in our home, in our marriage. I made the commitment to you, right? I said I do. We have a home. We have a child. And I made that commitment. And yet I can't be myself. I have to go elsewhere
to be myself.
So he's making a compromise, but it's a mythological compromise. He's compromising the family values, the marital commitment, in order to feel something that he believes he cannot feel within the walls of his own home. And he didn't actually make any other. Whatever reason, the character did not make the effort to create a settlement with his wife, right? He didn't.
Interesting.
He didn't do something to approach his wife to get concessions to deal with the issues that were going on in his life. And that's not to say that, he didn't have real stuff.
So basically what I hear you saying is he compromised his values in marriage. Not necessarily like the promise with type of thing. No, he actually he made a settlement that was not a part in agreement with the commitment that he had.
He violated the agreement. So you asked about myths, and so the myth that that scene is exploding really is that I have to go outside, whatever I need to do to get my happiness, to have to make me feel good. That's the myth. I got to go do whatever that is, even if it means I have to violate my commitments.
Ooh, that's deep. That's deep.
Yeah,
I didn't get all that out of that movie, but I like what you got. I think that's really
I think it's a great
movie to definitely think about and definitely something to consider. I definitely appreciate you sharing that. I think one of the myths that I have seen with compromise is that it's almost like, well, and I think I kind of mentioned it before, well, if it doesn't work for me, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Almost like the myth of like, you're not supposed to compromise. That's what I'm like, you're not supposed to, because it doesn't work for you. Like, this person does not roll the way that I do. And so I can't really be friends with this person because they don't roll the way I do. So I'm not willing to compromise anything because it has to be my way or the highway almost. It has to be my standards. And I don't compromise anything. I've heard that said before, like, I don't do any compromising. If it don't work for me, it's like, right? To the left, this way, everything you own to the box in the left, right? So I think that the whole idea of compromise is that there are some situations where I think people have really adopted this myth about it, that it's not supposed to happen. And when you're breaking down this root word, that it absolutely supposed to happen, right?
Yes.
So I think you guys, we got these 4 C's from like John's mother, which is my mother-in-law, and it was passed down to her to practice these 4 C's. I got these 4 C's on my wedding day. Now, have I kept to them? Not always, but they're always in the forefront of my mind and my heart to go, okay, what does that mean for us in our relationship? I know we were given these 4 C's, but how does it interact in our relationship? And I really believe that we, the two of us, have had to make some compromises in our marriage because we're 2 different people. And I want to talk about that a little bit, you guys, because when you're in relationships, no matter what kind they are, it's 2 different people trying to have this relationship, right? So that means it's 2 different people trying to be in the same space together and work on the harmony of having a relationship, the unity of having a relationship, which means that if you're different, you're both going to come to the table with some different thoughts, some different ways. You're not going to think alike on the same things, and you're not going to have the same complete 100% value package. You may have some values that match, but there are going to be some that are different. And as you grow in the relationship, you start to embrace or go, oh, that's a cool value this person has. And compromise actually happens in those times. But I want to talk a little bit. I wanted to just ask this question. How has this area in your relationships been difficult for you? You know, being that, you know, we're different. How has it been difficult for you either in our relationship or any relationship?
Compromise is difficult for me. The first thing that comes to mind is that I have a difficult time with conflict. I don't like to get into arguments, but I'm actually very skilled at doing so. I don't like it because I don't like the emotion. I don't like the emotional agitation of it. And so the area of compromise, when I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling emotionally off center, and it's in those moments that I find that I'm weak and unable to really compromise because I'm so wrapped up in the sort of the toxic emotion that's inside. Okay, so I can't get to the point of conceding. Like, I'm so wedded to, I'm holding on tightly to, like, I feel this way. I don't want to get hurt. And I want to defend myself. And that is a lack of stepping into the zone of compromise. It's like, okay, if I can let down my guard and I can put my feelings to the side, and then I can start thinking clearly and listening, and then actually having the courage to share my actual thoughts and feelings, then I can actually see if the other person is willing to embrace any of what I'm saying, and we can go this way. So the difficulty comes when I can't get out of my feelings and I want to be defensive.
Thank you. I can relate to that. Definitely. I think that it's interesting you said feelings with compromising, because we talked a little bit about that with commitment, that we can't just be so wrapped up, or was it caring? It was one of the episodes we were talking about our feelings and how they actually don't come to play. They're not supposed to come to play in a sense when you're focusing on a commitment or a compromise, because what ends up happening is our feelings are not always the truth, the truth of things. And so I think for me, I would say it's been difficult with compromise in a sense of there are things that you like that I don't like. So what's been difficult is to embrace and participate in some of those things over the years. I mean, I think I've gotten better at it. But I'm like, now it's more of, he likes this, or he likes baseball, so I'll go to the game. And I think that what in the past, the lack of compromise would be like, well, you just go to the game by yourself. That's the kind of like, because I don't like that. You know, that's not for me. I think a lack of compromise for me is very selfish. It's a very self-focused mindset if you are not willing to compromise in the relationship, because you are 2 different people trying to as I say, have the relationship in the same space with each other. I think it's been, well, since I don't like it, I don't have to do it. And I've actually seen a lot of relationships like that where, you know, he likes to golf, but I don't like golfing, so I'm not going to go. Instead of compromising and taking the opportunity to be in that space with you, because something beautiful may come out of it. And I think that that's what's been difficult for me, is really shifting my mindset on the opportunity that it offers me. But going with the mindset of like, well, I'm really not interested in that. And I think the biggest thing, like you're into politics. I could care less. You know, I could care less about politics. It's not my jam. But the fact that we are in a relationship together, it should be something that should lean my ear to at least want to know more about it because you like it. You know, that's the compromise that we're talking about here. And I think that, you know, it's taken me a long time to go, let me look at the possibilities of the things that he actually likes to do and get involved with him and spend some time. Maybe I'm not going to be going with you all the time at some of these things, but maybe I'm going to sit down when you say you go to a meeting with one of your political events, and when you come back, maybe I'm going to be sitting down talking with you saying, hey, how was it? Tell me about it. I want to know more about it. Engaging you in that situation. And y'all, compromise is an engagement. It really is. If you are not willing to engage a person, it's almost like you're not willing to compromise to connect. Compromising it's powerful because it creates a connection that is happening between the two people that would not have happened if you did not compromise. So that's something that I definitely learned about myself that have been difficult. When do you think a person who makes a compromise, when do you think that they may be lowering their standards?
They would be lowering their standards if they have values that they're violating. Okay. And so if you know you're in a relationship with somebody and you know you feel like there are things that make you violate your conscience. If you have to violate your conscience, then you would be compromising in a way of lowering your standards. Another way to do it is actually what I do the most, which is simply conflict avoidance. I think that it's actually a matter of compromising my integrity. If I am dishonest, if I am not courageous, if I am not conversational, if I am not willing to be vulnerable. So that is an unhealthy compromise. It's a false peace. We were reading about that in the Emotionally Healthy Spirituality book.
Yeah.
So that would be a negative compromise. It's basically saying, I feel something, and I know that the feeling itself may or may not be the truth, but it points me to something. It's like, you know, I cut my finger, so it's sore, right? So it calls out for assistance. So the feeling is sort of calling out for, it's an internal way of calling out for assistance. Try to rectify this. Try to rectify this. And if it's you know, interrelational, then the responsibility is to find a way to politely talk about it. If not, then you are compromising yourself and you're pretending to have a relationship. I'm not actually having a relationship.
Ooh, that's pretty intense. Pretending to have the relationship, you know, and I love when you talked about violating your conscience, because I do think that there are some situations. That's so funny because I was actually going to say that one too. But it's so interesting because we as a people, it's very easy to kind of like, here's another thing. There's some situations where people were like, they just want to please the person. They just want to please this person in this relationship, or they're being codependent of this person in this relationship. So they're going to go with whatever that person tells them. And that's something that I think that people would be almost violating or going against. It's the wrong time. It's not the healthy way to compromise is if you're codependent, because
Correct.
you're kind of seeing things through, I'm going to do it because I have to make sure I please them, or because something's going to go wrong if I don't. And I have to, stay in this because I can't, like almost being afraid that the relationship is going to fall apart or disappear if you don't do it this way. I personally feel like that's super unhealthy for a person to compromise in that way, because it's not allowing yourself to think through the situation. Number one, if you just kind of like do it because you're afraid of losing this person or losing this relationship or friendship, it really, really goes against almost like what it would be your value system in that situation. So what I'm saying is not like, hey, I can't compromise with what this person is doing or talking about, but if I'm only doing it because I have the fear of losing that relationship, that is unhealthy.
Right. Can I comment on that?
Yes.
It's not settlement.
It's not settlement.
That's the element of the definition of compromise that gets lost in many respects. So if I'm being codependent, which is something that I struggle with, I'm getting a false settlement. It's calm. Maybe it's all calm, right? But it's not. The matter's not actually settled.
Yeah.
A settled matter would be like each party says their piece, right? Each party says, this is what I want. Then each party says, this is what I'm willing to let go of.
And this is what I don't want.
Right. Yeah, this is what I don't want. And then, okay, I agree to your points. You agree to my points. And the matter's done. We're settled.
Yeah.
We're settled.
What do you think about, too, like the part of agreeing to disagree? What are your thoughts with that, with compromise?
Agreeing to disagree. Well, it depends on what the issue, where it goes after you agree to disagree. So I was listening to something. I heard something about that. Someone saying, I don't like that term, because I don't remember what it was, but it made me think about it. So agree to disagree that's okay. If we can disagree on certain things, if we're settled. If we're settled, right?
I like that.
If it's like, okay, if you don't see eye to eye on absolutely every item, that's fine. If each of you has come to the place, say, well, that's fine. You like this, I like that, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Then we're
both okay.
Right.
Settled.
Then we're settled, and we've agreed to disagree on a certain matter peaceably.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think the challenge with agree to disagree, it often comes up in the political domain, right? People will say that we agree to disagree, but we've left and we're still.
They're not together. No togetherness.
We're actually, we disagree and we actually don't like each other. We don't like. We're gonna and whenever we come back together, we're gonna fight, right?
Yeah.
So we've agreed to disagree because we haven't come to agreement, but nothing's settled.
Nothing's settled. Wow.
So if you do that in an interpersonal, like a political relationship, it usually comes down to an election, right?
Yeah.
So whatever it ends up, the other people decide. But if you're in an interpersonal relationship like that, there's no constituency that you're trying to get.
You can't treat it political.
No, you can't treat it political. You can't go to the rest of your family and say, "Can you vote on this issue to resolve?" It doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
No.
Thank you for that one. I love that analogy because it's so important that, like for you and I, we haven't always agreed on the same thing. You may see it some way and I'll see it another way, and then God has the right way, right? And so for us, we've had to come to the table of like really going, I think for me, I've just had to embrace like, that's his conviction on that, that's, and it's okay for him to have that conviction on that. I don't have that conviction. And maybe at some point we will come together and I will have that same conviction, but right now I don't have it. And I think it's also allowing the person room to grow within themselves, so that they can see it. But I think it would be foolish to really in a relationship to just dismiss, because I think that's what politics do. That's why I don't like it. they just dismiss each other. There's always fighting. There's just dismissal. Nobody's hearing anybody. Nobody's embracing. Okay, let me that person might have a good point. It's not mine, but let me see what they're talking about here. It's automatically a war. And in relationships, you know, I believe that happens sometimes where it becomes a war instead of people engaging each other to really try. It's almost like what we talked about last week. If you care, if there's the heart to care about the person and looking at the experience you could possibly have with the person, if you allow yourself to hear from their space, their space. And even though you may not agree with it, you still embrace them as a person in the situation. And that's what we're talking about here, y'all. Compromising where you are able to really receive the person versus that you may not agree with what the person is saying. So I hope that makes sense. What do you think are some benefits that in a relationship, a person, when they're making the concession with one another, what are some benefits? Because I really want them to hear the benefits of compromise, because there are a lot.
Well, let me quote a scripture.
We talked a little bit about them already.
Yes,
but
I'm going to quote a scripture. It's Proverbs 18:17. It says, "The first to present his case seems right until someone comes along to question him." So that is a principle that basically says there are at least two sides to any story. There and over disputable or debatable or opinion matters, right? There's usually two different ways of looking, at least two different ways of looking at things. So like you were mentioning that a moment ago, that with politicians, they talk past each other, right?
Yeah.
They're in a debate. It's a tennis match. It's not really, it's not really
listening or
it's
hearing
not
at all.
a sharing of ideas.
No.
So but the principle in Proverbs 18:17, the relational principle, is like each side gets to express something. And if you have a caring and committed heart and a heart willing to compromise, then you will listen to the other side, and it will actually help you to either sharpen your own viewpoint, make it like, okay, let me rethink my own assumptions, and maybe you might learn something else that you didn't know before, and you might embrace a different way of looking at things, even if you don't agree with it 100%. And if you do that, if both parties are doing that, you can't help but to, if it's that agree to disagree point, you've done it in a settlement way. It's like, I've heard your point, you've heard my point, I've embraced your point, you've embraced my point, and now we're a little bit closer because we're not quite so hardened in our own dogma.
Hardened in our own dogma. That happens a lot.
It happens
a lot.
In relationships, in church, in
everywhere.
The workplace, in the government, all over the place. You got, this really wide, no shade of gray. Yeah,
it's everywhere.
Yeah, the division is everywhere,
and it's been with us too, y'all. So we're just talking like truth here. It's been with us. We have definitely experienced it, where it's been like, oh my gosh, all over the place. No, no area of compromise here. Just like, I'm gonna say what I gotta say, and he's gonna say what he's gotta say. And at the end of the day, y'all, it doesn't actually build. Because the goal in relationships is to grow and build, right? And one of the benefits, and that's one of the benefits for me personally, is that when you're in a relationship, you are growing and you are building this relationship. You are connecting. There's connection that happens when you are compromising with each other. There's something that's beautiful in the love department. It just blossoms a little bit more. Those benefits. What are some other ones that you could think of? The benefits.
You actually are stretching your ability to love. You're expanding your heart. If you can actually lay down your weapons,
I like that.
Lay
Talk
down
a little bit about
your verbal weapons, your emotional weapons. If you can lay those things down, and you can listen, be quick to listen and slow to speak. Is another scripture. If you can do those things, then you actually expand your maturity, you expand your ability to love, you expand your ability to enter into somebody else's world
Expansion.
And these are just things that grow us into godliness. They grow us into healthier husbands and wives, friends, coworkers, so on and so forth. So that's really the benefits. That there is a personal benefit to it. It's like, instead of being stuck here, you can actually get some new tools or new building blocks and be a stronger person in between and have stronger bonds with that other person, which then can actually buttress against the future storms, because they're inevitably going to come.
Ooh, I definitely love the whole weapon thing. I've never heard you say that before. Laying down your weapons,
yeah.
like that's, and isn't it when there's a fight, that's what's happening. You're
Words
pulling
and
out
emotions.
your weapons, words or weapons and all of that.
Yeah, they're weapons.
I do love how you talked about it stretches your love for the person. It stretches your caring ability too. And we were talking about last week, flexing the care muscle. One of the, as you were talking, I was thinking about, I'm like, wow, it actually, the benefit is strengthens your character. Like as you were talking about growth. As an individual. Yes. And I one of the things that I absolutely love that, community is kind of my thing. Like I love having a great community. Like I don't think God at all put us on this earth to kind of do our just individual thing. I think that's why there's so many of us, because there's supposed to be a community. And so it's very important to me. But one of the things as you were talking that came to mind is that the benefit of compromising, also you're actually learning people in general. You're learning how to build a community with people, because what I learned from you, if I compromise my, certain things that maybe I have my certain feet in the ground on, if I start to embrace you, I learn a lot more about you. And actually some of the things that you have in your toolbox, your life toolbox, may actually serve me, may actually help me in somewhere later in my life. Maybe not in that moment, and maybe I can't see it in that moment, but it actually may help me somewhere down the road, because I'm actually learning you and I'm learning something from you. So I think that that's a benefit too, but I don't think that, I know I wasn't thinking about that when we first got these 4 C's. When your mother said compromise, I was like, she's got to be, where did she come from? She's not from this world, because we don't compromise. There's no compromise. And so I embraced it and I smiled like a great daughter-in-law. But in my mind and my heart, I was like, that word is not going to be a part of this relationship. But I've grown to appreciate this word so much, y'all. It has really, really helped me. So thank you for sharing those benefits. I want to go over here and look at some of these comments to see what people are saying over here. Let's see what people got. And I can't see everybody, y'all. I can't see everybody. I can only see a few people. So all my YouTube people, thank y'all for watching. And all of my Facebook people on those other pages, thank you for watching. But I'll get to your comments later. But for the nitty grit page, I have here, good stuff. Let's see here. This is such a powerful conversation. It's so needed. Love this show. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I can't see any more comments on here, but you guys, first of all, I just appreciate anytime you comment, anytime you interact, anytime you engage, because we really, really love your engagement, because community is my thing, y'all. So I thank you for the comments and the engagement. We're going to keep it going because I don't see that many comments on there. So maybe they're on that other page, but whatever you guys put, we always appreciate. So thank you. I wanted to ask you this. Is there something that you wish you would have compromised that you didn't, and why?
I wish I would have compromised earlier in our marriage to start having a family. And the reason why is now I'm a seasoned citizen. I can get the senior menu at Denny's legitimately.
He can, not me. I'm not there yet.
But I did not compromise on that. on trying to start a family and have children earlier. And so that, while I'm very thankful that we have children, we got them when we got them, but we were later in life. And so now we're both older, and, you know, when you're older, you need more supplements and sleep to keep up the energy, right? And so when you have younger kids at, you know, a more seasoned age, you're not at your peak, like, physical energy. I'm trying to be really politically correct, but it's, you know, it's not as challenging, and you know,
tired,
we'd be tired, and then, you know, you go to drop them off at school, and you see these other people there.
They're like 10,
they
20
could
years younger
actually,
than we are.
yeah, right, they could be our children. So you're like, wait a minute, I'm in a different life space from these other people who are bringing their kids to school, and
25-year-olds.
Yeah, it could be, and we could have had a larger family. You know, the Bible does say that children are a blessing, and, you know, basically, you know, you see biblical families are huge, and so, you know, that I wish I would have compromised on, because I didn't realize how incredible it is to be a parent, how wonderful it is to have a next generation in your home, as difficult as it is. And you know, I was selfish in those younger days, and I'm like, man, this will just cramp our style. And like, but, you know, I wasn't thinking that, you know, my style was going to get rickety and you know, arthritic so soon. So I wish I would have compromised, because we would have had more energy to keep up with them. We could have had more kids, and, you know, a bigger family, and you know, send more of our values into the next generation.
Wow.
How about
Thank
you?
you for that, babe.
You're welcome.
I don't have anything that I could have compromised. I think I've made a lot of compromise. No, just joking. I have, though. Wouldn't you agree that I've made a lot of compromise?
Yeah, you've made a lot of compromises.
I will say this, though, because there's definitely a few areas in my life that I wish I could have compromised. One of them is, I do believe that I wish I would have done this differently, which was two things: the mindset of the word in itself, because I think I came into the marriage with an energy and a lack of, I was not willing to compromise much of anything. And I think that because of that, I wish that I would have stepped back as a woman who's very a personality. Trust your leadership. Trust you leading our family, and trust you leading. I think I got in the way of a lot of that. You know, I think I got in the way of that. And I think that it's because of the way I came in with, I don't compromise, you know, because I remember, you know, if I grew up, like I shared with a few people before, I grew up with strong women who, you know, were leading the households because the man was not there. Right. And so I literally had that mindset coming in, like, if he doesn't do what he's supposed to do, I'm just going to do it, and it's just going to get done, because I ain't got time to wait around for somebody to, you know,
step up.
Yeah, I'm not compromising because he don't have the ability, or he's not there yet. And I think that was a mindset that was literally off, because you've always been a leader, but because I was in the way of it, it wasn't necessarily on the forefront all the time, you know? And so I think that that's something I wish I would have done differently, because I think that it would have had more harmony in the beginning stages, and more unity in our marriage. I think that there was a lack of unity in the early stages of our marriage because I didn't have that mindset. It was almost like we were young and stupid. Well, I was young and stupid. And thought my way was the best way to actually run things in the household, or that it's got to be. It's almost was like, well, you know, he's not gifted in this area. I am. I'm gifted in this area, and I can do it. And I didn't look at that you did have gifts, and that God definitely had arranged it for you to lead. But if I'm in the way, you can't do it. If I step in your way like this here, you can't go and do what you're supposed to do. So I definitely wish I had a different mindset, and I did that differently. So,
all right.
There you have
Thanks
it.
for your transparency.
You're welcome. What are some things that I think we talked about this a little bit, but I want to ask this. What are some things that a person maybe, I would say, never, ever, ever, ever compromise? And we talked a little bit already about it.
Yeah,
you talked about if it violates them, but
yeah.
Are there any other things that they just should never?
Well, integrity is sort of the, it's a that would be it. Your integrity is sort of your uprightness. Like, when you're doing the right thing and you know the right thing to do, that's not something to compromise. And it's awfully tempting because there are sort of shades of gray.
Yeah.
And not everything is such a clear-cut decision, but that would be it. Don't compromise your integrity personally. And then, like, if you're in a marriage relationship in particular, you cannot compromise that lifetime commitment.
Yeah.
That's just, it can be difficult, but you can't compromise that. You said I do in front of God and a whole bunch of people likely. And so you have to honor that. That's not something to be compromised. It's not something to be, tossed away because of so-called irreconcilable differences.
When I hear that's a good word.
That term irreconcilable differences is essentially a misapplication of compromise. It's like, we're reconcilable. I will not compromise because of X, Y, and Z. Therefore, it's irreconcilable. Well, you're misinterpreting what the actual meaning of this word is. It's not that you won't compromise, is that you're intransigent. Another fancy college word. It means you're just stuck in the mud.
Yeah.
You're stuck in the mud.
I always look at irreconcilable difference means they just can't get along right now.
Can't get along and won't try. Won't try any further. Won't try any further. Now, if somebody else, if it's imbalanced in the sense that you got one person that's really trying and another person that is adamantly rejecting and refusing, okay, well, you can't make a compromise because it does take both parties. It does take both parties. So you can't compromise to the point of like, oh, well, you can just sit in, your alcoholism or your abuse or your selfishness or whatever it is. And you're not making that you can't make a compromise. You shouldn't compromise. Then he's like, look, I'm going to do the right thing. And I would love for you to come along and we can then talk about it. But if you don't want to, okay, then I won't compromise.
I like that. Good point. Good point. Integrity is huge. I also think going along with integrity, we are both, and we've never not really looked at each other in this way. But one of the things that I would say is your holiness, your relationship with God.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I think for us, that's how we met. Have we always been on point spiritually? No. But I think that, I just want to put this out there for me personally, to compromise my relationship with God or holiness and choosing him versus, my marriage or relationship, I'm going to choose him. Yeah. And so I definitely believe that there is a situation where your value system that you have, your relationship with someone greater than yourself, which is our Lord, is so important to me. And like, that's something I don't ever want to say, I'm going to compromise. I'm not going to follow the Lord because you tell me to, or you don't want me to. Like if you were to choose, like, this is not for me anymore. It's not going to be, it's one of those things that you go, this is a part of my values. So this is core stuff here. And I think that's what you're kind of talk about too with integrity. It's like our core stuff, y'all, like the core stuff, and because it's in your spirit, it's not like someone has to tell you what's core. What's core, and when, like you mentioned earlier, when it violates, when your character is being defamed because of it, when your integrity is lost, when your faith is no more because of it. Those are indicators that, hey, hold up. This is not something I can promise you, because I can't promise to lose my faith. I can't promise to lose my integrity. I can't promise with
Correct.
to defame my character, to not be who God made
Yeah.
me to be. And that's a fine line, y'all, because I think that sometimes people can cross those lines, those boundaries in relationships.
God, yeah,
So
God
what are your
is
thoughts?
God is transcendent. So God is above
All of it.
all of it. So yeah, you can't that you actually have to, the wise person is going to value his or her relationship with God first, and then, you know, their human relationships next. And so really, you know, when we talk about reaching a settlement, you know, if you think about like the legal process, sometimes there's an arbitrator or a mediator, right?
Yes.
So that's a third party that comes in to help the people on either side to sort things out. So, I mean, maybe that's a little bit of a simple analogy, but in some ways, God, the Bible, things like that is an arbitrator. It's like, okay, look, if we can't agree here, maybe we ought to go up to the next level. We got to go to the transcendent, and we got to go to God to arbitrate this thing. We need God to sort this out because God is higher than us. Yeah.
Than the situation. Good stuff, babe. Yeah. Love it. Someone says, I like the transparency. They like your seasoned citizen. Y'all dropping the stuff tonight. Make us think. Thank you, guys. That's good stuff there. I appreciate it. We're about at our time,
yes,
Mr. Steinwright. So I just wanted to see if there were any other possible ways that you could think that a person is just leaving some more tools. If I'll say, any other thoughts that come to mind on what would actually help a relationship, because we're talking about relationships, not just marriage, although we are, but relationships in general. Are there any other tips or thoughts you could think of that could help a person be better together in their relationship?
If you can settle things quickly. The temptation is to settle them falsely quickly, but if you can actually have it as a value, like I don't want to go to sleep angry. I don't want to let things fester. I want to actually deal with them. Let me deal with them quickly and politely, you know, out of my my head, really, and just sort of get down to like really listening to the other person's point of view. That would be to me a really good way of reaching compromise. And it's I'm not some sort of perfect example of that, because there's way too many times when I get heady or I get overly emotional, and I have a long history of just trying to settle things just so that I don't have to deal with a conflict, or I don't have to deal with the intensity of the situation. But it's backfired so many times because it doesn't solve anything. It really doesn't solve anything. Maybe the tone gets calmed down for a little bit, but it doesn't really solve the problem. It's sort of like, you know, again, you have an infection, you might start treating it, but if you don't really clean it out, if you don't put the medicine on, you don't cover it up, you don't get the state, whatever you need, you don't fully deal with it, it's gonna just come back.
Yeah, and it's not real compromise.
It's a false compromise.
It's falsely done. So those are some things to watch out for, that falsely done type of compromise, because it'll eventually actually come back to you. The same situation will come back to you in another form.
Boomerang.
One of the things I think that would make the betterness in the relationship, a togetherness, is listening.
Yes.
I think listening, I want to leave you guys with that, because listening is so powerful, and you could hear people's full heart completely. You could hear even their thoughts almost when you listen, because they're communicating themselves, right? They're talking through what they're actually thinking and what they're actually feeling. And all you got to do is listen, and not just listen, y'all, but validate. That's a great compromise that I would say has worked powerfully for us, because even if there was something I didn't agree with John, or he didn't agree with me, when I just sat still to listen and then validated what you were sharing, it actually that's almost like the agree to disagree, because you didn't even feel I would be disagreeing. in those moments because I listened to your point of
Mhm.
view and then I validated what you were saying. And that is powerful
Mhm.
in any relationship. So I think that's what I would have to offer that would help you to have a togetherness
Mhm.
in any relationship is that if you actually really take the time
To listen.
to hear people out, to listen to them,
Mhm.
because people want to be heard.
Yes.
They really do. Nobody wants to feel like they are just dismissed and not cared for. They want to be heard. And so there you have it, y'all. That is it for us tonight. So we talked about communication the first week.
Commitment.
Commitment. Thank you. Commitment the first week. We talked about caring the second week, and now we're talking about compromise. So we're going to have a fourth C for y'all next week. And if you'd like to know more about that, please join us. But as always, we thank you, YouTube. We thank you, Facebook, all of y'all. And so here's a tip for you that I think will be helpful.
Okay.
To compromise for you individually. Do something that you may not have done before in any relationship. It could be with your spouse. It could be with your coworker. It could be with your daughter. It could be with your friend. Do something different to better the relationship. Whatever that is for you, find what it would be for you that you could do something different that would better your relationship. Choose one thing and do it. And then when we come back on next week, I want to hear some comments in the chat on what you guys done. And I'm going to ask you.
What's that one thing you did?
What's that one thing that you did to show that you're willing to compromise, that you're involved in the togetherness? And can you close out and wrap up that last line, what we said compromise was, so we can leave that with them?
So compromise is promising with
that you said something about a settlement.
Oh, too. It's a settlement with concessions. Settlement with concessions. Yeah.
Settlement with concessions. So go out, you guys, on this Friday, on this weekend, and have amazing settlement concessions. So that's it for y'all. We appreciate y'all as always. I am Chantel.
And I'm John. And there's one more thing. You have to do it.
He's got one more thing.
Either I'm going to do it or you're going to do it.
So I'll do it this week. So y'all, here's a thing too that you can do a little bit different. You can compromise where you can do some togetherness with yourself by going and getting my gratitude journal and start writing in it what you're grateful for in your relationships. Okay. John always wants to do these plugs, so I'm going to go ahead and do them. I have gratitude journals on my website, chanteldenise.com. You can go there and get them. You can definitely apply these gratitude journals with what we're talking about, what we were talking about all the 2 weeks before and this week. Compromise is so important. And you can literally find out what you need to compromise with a gratitude journal. Because if you start looking at what you're grateful for in your relationships, you're going to find something to compromise. You will. So I'm going to just leave that with y'all as it is. Thank y'all for watching. We appreciate you. And as always, make it a great day because you can. Peace, y'all.